Hello. Oh
Oh,
no, why is the
hello.
Ori timer on? No, don't yell at
Very
me.
loud. Whoa.
I'm loud?
I think because my volume was up. I don't know why.
No, I'm like, I didn't
Not
really
like I
change
changed
anything.
it when I left.
Like, I didn't change anything. It's just a loud hello, I guess. I'm being fancy. I don't know.
I found a secret stash of chocolate in my
Oh.
dining room.
I learned. Hello, Pastry Puff. Hello, how are you?
Hey, pastry.
I learned the very worst trait about a deaf dog. About having the worst thing about having a deaf old dog. Do you want to know what it is? Any guesses? Hello, Lakitu.
I'm so damn curious, but I imagine it has to do with lack of hearing and food.
It doesn't have to do with food.
Really?
But it is related. A non-deaf dog wouldn't have this problem, and the reason is because of being deaf. No, the problem is a lot of dogs, at least in my experience with dogs, wake up rather easily when they can hear, because they can hear, and you're not walking around your house very quietly and stuff, but they hear stuff. When you have a deaf dog, they don't wake up. Now, why is this a problem? This is a problem because they're so damn cute when they sleep, but you can't pet them because you know you're gonna startle them and wake them up, and it's so sad.
Aww.
It's the saddest timeline.
That is the saddest thing I've ever heard.
I'm eating
Oh.
chocolate. I can't respond.
Hiya, Lakitu, bro. Welcome, welcome. Ori is telling us a very sad story.
Yeah. So my dog
That
is
hurts.
absolutely adorable, and she sleeps absolutely adorable. And all I want to do is pet her cute little face, but she's asleep, so I don't want to wake her up. That's mean.
And startle her because, you know, deaf can't
Yeah.
hear the incoming danger.
It's so sad
You don't want to wake her up and scare
It's the
her,
worst
even if it
thing
is for love and cuddles.
about a
Aw.
deaf dog. Worst thing. Worst thing. But
Saddest thing I've ever heard.
the other sad thing that I'm doing to myself is that I'm not using my favorite digital art tool right now because it's supposed to look hand-drawn, and they don't have symmetry tools in journals.
Oof.
So,
You
I
really went
resigned
ham on
myself.
that one.
I resigned myself. I may actually open the YouTube thing so that I have faster response times for them YouTubers. I think the Twitch thing moves faster in the combo than the YouTube one, so you guys
Oh, it-
might get
it
a little more
definitely does.
priority.
I have tested it with our Ace Attorney nights, and Twitch definitely moves quicker than.
It
excuse
shows
me,
up
YouTube.
faster on my combo
Oh,
than
yeah.
YouTube does.
Always.
Very interesting. I wonder
Always,
why.
always.
All right, that means I'll
I
have
don't
the.
know. It'd be something to look into, maybe, but I think it's just how the
I just think it's how it is.
site works.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But what I will, so that means that I'll have YouTube up over here. Yeah, it does show up a lot faster, Pastry Puff. But I'll have it up over here on the right so that hopefully I can cater to you guys a little more. I don't want you to feel left out as I eat my very last piece of chocolate. So, Mars, entertain them for a little longer.
I'm also eating my last piece of chocolate.
I won't quote you, Lakitu, but there's
It's,
definitely latency. But I have all of the settings on, like, ultra low, right? But what I have, because I stream on both YouTube and Twitch, I have a little stream chat that's both of you guys together. So it all pops up in one place for me without the restream
It's
bot stuff.
streamlined, so she doesn't have to hop between chats.
But the problem with that is it looks like it actually takes a significant amount of time from the YouTube one to pop up in my group one versus the TikTok one. The Twitch one. So I don't know. But I'll try to look over here a little more. The problem with it is that I keep the one chat actually on the same screen as my art program when I'm doing art, because I can't look between it. Versus during Ace Attorney, I can actually, like, turn my head. I don't need to be staring at the Ace Attorney screen the whole time. But,
yeah,
you know.
for the most part, that's pretty static. Doesn't require constantly staring.
Except when I absolutely fuck up in Ace Attorney, Jesus.
All the line flubs. Just line flubs.
No,
for
I'm not
days.
talking about the line flubs. I'm talking about the goddamn physical inputting of the things. I screw up so much it seems like just in Rise from the Ashes.
And that's
Okay.
why Dylan and I are on you for our current case.
Yeah. No, but I'm editing Rise from the Ashes, right? And way before we get Luminol, I already fuck it up. I already fuck up. There's like a scene where I'm supposed to present the crime photo, but I presented the shoe a second time. And so the chat is yelling at me. Chat's like, you presented the shoe a second time. It was the shoe. You did it wrong. You're just an idiot. And I was like, oh, fuck. Whoops. I am an idiot. And I know there's that one.
Meanwhile, in the games universe, it's like, Phoenix, look at this shoe. Oh, yes, that's a shoe, pal. Okay, next evidence. Look at this shoe.
No, literally,
it's still the same shoe, pal.
Edgeworth's line is like, are you sure that's not your blood on that shoe? Because you shot yourself in the foot, right? Like, that's his actual line. That's not a Dylan coming up with that Edgeworth line. That's an actual line. Also, guys, I saw this beautiful... Did you get to watch the video, Mars?
No, I didn't.
And I can't spoil it. Never mind.
Okay. I was in a rush coming home today.
I don't blame you.
Because, you know,
I even showed it to Dylan.
My meetings went over the time limit.
How could they?
So, the first one took a while. For those of you who
now
don't
you know how I feel.
I am in grad school.
I know.
I
how
am
could
learning
you?
to be an SLP. I start clinic in a week, so this week was all about meeting with supervisors to discuss like what we're gonna do, expectations, all that good stuff. The meetings ran over time. Not that I'm complaining. I got every single one of my questions answered.
She's complaining a little bit.
But well, not so much complaining, but it was more like my co and I were working together, and all of a sudden I realized, oh my god, it's 7 o'clock. If I don't leave now, there's no way I'm getting home in time and getting ready for stream on time. So I said to her, like, hey, I gotta run.
I'm sorry, but I have an obligation.
I'm
Whoops.
sorry. I have a commitment every Thursday.
I know. I'm
My
such
bad.
a slave driver, aren't I, guys? Chat.
Oh, you're such a slave driver.
Dylan calls me a slave
You
driver.
made me fear for my life if I'm not on stream on time with the right costume, with the right.
Yes, I dock your pay for every minute that you are late.
She does dock my pay. Less artwork in the morning to wake up to.
Hey, I gave you so much
Truly
art today.
tragic.
I gave you so much art today. Don't
Oh,
even.
you gave me some fabulous art
I gave
today.
you
I
art
assume that's
and
because
lore.
I've been doing good these last few weeks, huh?
Guys,
I'm sorry,
don't-
guys.
don't
I'm
tell
running
Mars.
on like I don't know how much sleep, so
Don't
I am
tell
in like
Mars.
a weird mood tonight.
but the amount of art that I give her has nothing to do with her performance and only my ability to cut out art.
I mean,
Don't tell her that though. She doesn't need to know.
that holds true for Ori's fanfiction as well. It's not so much that she's doing well; it's just the muse strikes when it chooses.
I know, yeah, hostage, exactly. I held my friends hostage in college to play Overcooked. Now I friend my holds hostage to play Ace Attorney. That makes sense if you don't think about
Did
it.
you say
I promise.
I
I said don't
friend
think
my
about it.
holds
I said don't
hostage?
think about it. I said
Too
do not
late.
think
I'm
about it.
thinking about it. I'm
Well,
thinking about it.
That's your own fault then. I never guaranteed that I would be coherent to the majority of people. I just only hope that I will be.
That's quite a concern. Come see me in a couple of years. Maybe I can help you with that.
I feel like, well, I guess I was gonna say I feel like it's less a speech thing and more a brain thing. But and while you also
Hey, we
deal,
work with the
well, I was
brain
gonna say,
as well.
while you also deal with brain things, I don't feel like it's that kind of brain thing.
Probably not.
I'm very sorry.
Probably.
I
Have
speak
you been
normally
hit on the
most
head
of the time.
recently?
Not to my knowledge, which could be a problem if I was and I forgot. That's very bad actually. That's one of the worst things.
Mm.
But
Exceptionally dangerous too.
well, yeah. But if you forgot, that's concussed. You know, if you're
Yeah.
dazed and confused, concussed. But
That's straight up concussed.
I
no argument.
concur that.
Moving on.
We're gonna talk about background through character design. Now, what does I mean by this? Very little because I can't speak, but if I could speak, what I would intend to mean by this is essentially that when you design a character, or when you look at a character that has been designed, which is essentially every character that is definitely in like a thing, some thought has gone into it. Now, I can't say that every artist's OC ever has a lot of thought into it, because sometimes you're just vibing. You know, sometimes you're just vibing. I also will say,
just saw a cool outfit and want to put that character in it.
yeah, you know, sometimes the design comes first and story comes later. Sometimes they're kind of, you know, simultaneous and everything like that. But sometimes, you know, you just kind of vibe and figure it out later. I will say I'm a big person like that. You know, I do that a lot. Honestly, when I sit down and think about it.
That.
Yeah, that's the word. I don't think about character design too much 90% of the time. But not in sort of this sense. But what's nice about it is that when you do it well, even accidentally, it all kind of falls into place. And so there are some things that you can think about when you're getting started in order to sort of figure that out. Now, I think, and Mars, tell me if you feel otherwise, but I feel like that character visual design is, of course, and it being very meaningful, is, of course, much more important when you are having a visual medium. When you have like a novel, or even like a podcast, it doesn't really matter what they look like, because it's kind of difficult to draw attention to it unless they have some very specific feature, like a scar that like glows when they use magic or something. Like that's a very specific feature, but their overall clothes and everything.
If I can hop in with my 2 cents
please.
there, I would definitely say, like, from the writing perspective, because I mean, I sort of, not really dabble in character design, but, you know, sometimes when writing a story, you do want at least an idea of what this character looks like, because your audience needs something to envision. I totally agree with you on the podcast thing, where it's like, okay, if the detail is important, it's probably going to be mentioned.
You don't have to remember it.
Like, yeah, well, it also comes down to what type of podcast you're listening to. Like, I'm sure for our D&D players out there, you've played with people who are like super into detail about their character.
Hello,
they're
Anima.
describing what clothes they're wearing. Hey, Anima. They're describing what clothes they're wearing, what their hair looks like, what hairstyle it's in, if they have like facial hair or not. Like, they're going into it. And then you have another person who's just like, yeah, it's a dwarf. It looks like a dwarf. And, you know, that's totally fine. It all depends on what you're going for. I would say if you're doing a novel, then it definitely becomes maybe a little bit more important, because there's certainly some stuff you can hint at through clothing, which I'm sure you're going to get into, Ori, so I'm not going to go into that for you.
It's okay, Anima. I know you've been busy. So I hope your cons and school and everything have been going well. But exactly, never feel guilty about it.
Never apologize. We're just happy to have you and see you and know you're well.
What's the word that I'm looking for? We're non-essential, I guess, is the word. You know, we're a pleasure, right?
Priority.
So
we're not priority.
It is our pleasure when you are able to come. But as long as I don't think you're dead, like as a person, because I do care about everybody in chat, I understand not being around all the time. So nobody ever has to apologize. We appreciate you when you're here,
the end of
and when you can
school
make
year.
it. And that you do spend
it's great.
Your limited free time with us whenever that may be.
Yes.
But yeah, the other thing about sort of the visual character design, yes, no, I'm sappy. I'll be sappy. Sometimes I'm sappy. Yes, I would assume so. I don't know. But I have seen your posts about, you know, school and you have like a lot of cons and stuff you're doing stuff for. So, no worries. The real world gets busy. But yeah, I'll get sappy. Daw indeed. But,
we are the queens of sap.
Queens of sap. I do like trees, so it does make sense. Maple syrup is very delicious. And so, so when it's interesting you bring sort of D&D and thus, just tabletop RPGs up, because this is a curious thing to ask everybody, including you, Mars. So chat and Mars, everybody can answer the question. How much thought do you put into a TTRPG player character's design that is supposed to be meaningful and not just cool, right? Does that make sense? Personally, when I design my tabletop characters, very little has to do with necessarily their background. It more has to do with what they're doing, right? If my whole point is to be an alchemical chef, I want to look like an alchemical chef. But beyond that, I'm mostly just being cool, right? I pick tiefling because it looks cool, right? I want wings because they look cool. I want patterns on my skin and tattoos and whatever because it looks cool. I'm not trying to necessarily put out like, oh, this character's been to jail or is very good at, really likes art or something. It's like they are a chef that is a really cool fantasy chef, right? Like there's very little beyond that. I'm not trying to make, personally, their backstory part of it. So chat, let me know what you guys feel. And Mars, how have you gone about it in thinking about your character designs?
So my feeling personally, I think it very much comes down to what kind of campaign I'm playing. Because I know you've seen, Ori, that some of my characters are very involved and have very deep backstories, and others are kind of like, yeah, I'm more so going for a vibe, or I just want to try out this like class or race. I'm not really going for like a full-fledged character here. That kind of comes later once I kind of figure out how to play it. But for example, like I think the character, if we're talking look, had the most thought put into them, I would say that's probably Miss Molly at this point. Because up until that point, a lot of my characters, like, their personality was the focus, but not so much the looks. Like for Alar, he was part of a pirate campaign, so it was like swashbuckler shirt, pants, boots, done. For Jolie, she lived in the forest, so it's like, okay, dress with like hand-sewn stitching on them. It's a little detail that alludes to like her making her own clothes or something, but it's not super detailed. Whereas like with Miss Molly, I remember describing her character and be like, oh, she has like the little pigtail, she's got the yarn hair, she's got like the gingham style picnic dress. I'm basically describing a Raggedy Ann
Raggedy
doll.
Ann was a Jeopardy answer the other night.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I got it right.
Funny. Nice. Do you remember the question?
It was like a quote that she said about her neck being almost ripped off after something. I don't even remember exactly what it was. It was from the show.
Jesus.
No. It was like a goofy, like from the show, right? Like a goofy kid's gag, like Nearly Headless Nick, right? It's not like a morbid thing. It's like, oh no, you like ripped my stuffing, like it's a little kid show. And the answer is Raggedy Ann, the show. Like who said it?
I see. But that element was very important to me because one, it was the inspiration, it was the basis for Miss Molly's whole design, but two, I really wanted to emphasize to the group, like, this is a kid, like, this is not an adult in a doll's body that like acts like on the same level as them. No, this is a kid. And it's emphasizing like how her hair is done, how she walks and moves around, like she's flopping all over the place, but she's not like trying to hold herself steady. She just kind of lets herself flop because for the most part she was, keyword being was, very carefree in the beginning.
Yes, poor child. So, but
poor child sold her soul within 3 sessions.
But so. Yeah, Lakitu agrees, saying that even though they haven't played a lot of tabletop, that they would feel they put more of the backstory into personality than their design. And now, that's definitely what I do. And what's interesting to me, and this is definitely a me, like a preference, right?
Mm-hmm.
As a tabletop player, I put more credence on how the character interacts during the campaign than what their backstory is. I am not a person that has desired. So there's a very interesting thing. So Dylan, you all know Dylan. He is the DM for our current campaign, and he's the DM for another one of our big long campaigns that ended up in a TPK, which was sad because he had a lot of cool machinations and stuff that just never came to fruition because we died. But the point I'm trying to make is that one of the characters in both of these campaigns has a backstory that I'm pretty sure mostly they written, but like workshopped with Dylan, that is very integral to the story that Dylan has made for the campaign, right? Because we don't play any pre-made campaigns. All of the campaigns are homebrew campaigns. And
yes,
so
we have some very hardworking DMs in our group.
we like to be creative. We don't like to be told what to do. That's what our group entails. But and with that, we like I said, so there's these two characters, one in each campaign, that are very integral to the plot, and I actually think it's two in our current campaign, and it's bordered on three, but I don't think it doesn't have to do with her backstory. It has to do with what she did in the campaign. But my characters, none of my characters have ever had these large overarching backstories that are meant to even be given to the DM in a way to make stuff from my past come up through my backstory. I would prefer that if the DM wants to, that they can be like, ah, yes, this is someone you know, to my character, right? And be like, ah, yes, from your village or something. And then I can interact with that however I want, because now it's on the spot. I enjoy learning about my character through how I decide to play them in the moment. A good example of that is in one of our most recent sessions, I fed rotten meat to a mimic because it asked me to feed it, and I fed it rotten meat. And now Ori, knew that Mimic probably wouldn't like rotten meat, but that was the only meat we had that wasn't zombie meat, so it was kind of, and ourselves, obviously. Mostly myself.
Was a desperate
Actually,
moment.
only myself. Everybody else is not meat in our party, so, that's another thing. But the point is that I said a line that was something along the lines of, "Oh, is it bad? I wouldn't know. I don't eat meat." That was not planned. that was not a thing that I had stated before, that my character's like vegetarian or whatever, but they are now. And so with that sort of mindset comes a total disregard for need of my character to look a certain way based on their background, right? Based on their backstory. Mm-hmm. Now, instead of that, on the reverse, when writing a story, writing a comic, you kind of have, at very least, the idea of what their background is going to be, right? But it also matters what they are now. And that's sort of the two things you have to play off. A lot of, in the tabletop games, right, the look of your character matters a lot more of what they are now. Like I talked about, if I wanted to be an alchemical chef, I'm going to look like an alchemical chef, because I'm an alchemical chef right now. Right? I wasn't an alchemical chef in the past, necessarily, but at this moment, I am dressed as what I am now. Right? And so, I think it only matters as to how much of your personality you're bringing from your backstory into your current character phase. Right? So, a good example, and this is actually very fortuitous, and I didn't mean for this to happen, but essentially, we have known Milano's backstory for a while. I think second longest to Hotson, just because Hotson's is the whole deal. So we kind of needed to know him first. But Milano we know second very, very well. And with that, it matters what of his personality that he had in his backstory still continues to this day. Another good one is Sinnit.
Sinnit is definitely
Sinnit's probably the
example.
easiest one. I'm just reading Pastry Puff here. Cooking up headcanons for fan art for characters. Ah, I see. Yes, that is very fun. Especially characters. So Pastry Puff essentially says that they like to give headcanons and stuff for fan art of characters they like from, like, you know, other media and stuff, not their own OCs. Like giving scars and other pouches and these sort of things, trinkets and whatever. That is very fun. I think the scars ones are very, very common and enjoyable because a lot of times characters, at least depending on what media you watch, don't necessarily show all of their skin, right? Unless it's a specific part. So it's very easy to be like, oh, yes, they do just have scars. Or you want to give them scars later because they changed something, or just having a good time. Scars look cool. Not all our characters have scars. 2 of our characters have scars. Technically 3, but you don't know them yet, so it's okay. But yeah, so that is definitely fun, Pastry Puff. I'm definitely a rule of cool first in tabletop, no doubt, because to me it doesn't really matter because of that. It's not a visual medium, right? It's not even if I draw my character, which I have, I don't think that anybody playing the game is thinking that hard about what they look like at any given moment. I am a person with a voice. You know, I'm not necessarily very matters what exactly I look like unless I go into detail describing how I killed this hand monster or something specifically, right? I don't know, Mars, are you constantly thinking about how everybody else in the party looks?
I definitely have some kind of visual in my head. Like, for example, the campaign with Gilith, I definitely felt like I had a clear idea of what everyone looked like, and it made it, at least for me, I really liked being able to envision the characters interacting off each other and having that very specific picture to go along with. It made it even more fun when it's like Ori makes these official cards for us, and it's kind of cool to see, like, oh wow, that was actually kind of close to what I was envisioning, which is kind of a testament to how well our group is at conveying things.
Well, that's a very funny thing. You mentioned I played a micro campaign with Dylan and Fuel King. So Dylan was the DM, and it was Fuel King and I as the players. So it was very small and honestly very, very nice. One of my favorite, if not my favorite, micro campaign that we have played. I didn't really describe my character at the time of starting the game. They knew that he was a Yuan-ti pure blood, and that was about it. And the reason for that is because I didn't think about it. I cared more about his personality. Now, so I had no idea what this guy looked like, just a general idea of my own personal, like, artistic preferences. So, like, he was gonna have hair. Dylan didn't picture him having hair. There was never an opportunity where he wasn't gonna have hair because I like my characters to have hair personally, so he was always gonna have hair. But the point is that somewhere throughout the campaign we come across a haberdashery, which is a men's, like, suit dressing store, right? So a high-end men's clothing store with suits and hats and all that sort of stuff. That was on fire, and we went into it and we rescued people and whatever, but the point is we got a lot of loot out of that. That was the haberdashery stuff, based on this soul encounter that I had no expect to happen, or anything like that. I now have a very, very handsome haberdashered boy right here, which is this guy in the middle with the contract. I don't think he would have had a top hat if we didn't go to the haberdashery. I don't think he would have had this epic freaking suit jacket if we didn't go to a haberdashery.
What you're describing there is incredibly, well, maybe not incredibly, but it was part of the plot.
It was
happened
part of
within
the plot.
game.
I had
and
no
because
idea.
it was so explicit,
Exactly.
that's how it became involved.
Yeah. So it was never, I had zero plans for this guy's aesthetic. And part of it came solely from the act of the campaign. So that's what's very interesting.
A very dapper gentleman.
Oh, he's a lovely man. Again, there's a reason that he's one of my 3 bard boys on my background. So there's a reason for that. But like we were saying before, when it comes to Sinnit, okay, so I think a good example as to how much effort I put into designing these characters, specifically based on their background and what they do now, was twofold, actually. They only have a little bit, I would say, of what they have in their background. It is much more focused, for most of them, on what they're doing now. However, what they're doing now is some, about 50% related to their background. And the example I think here that we could talk about most is Sinnit. Sinnit is the medic of the group, okay? He helps when they get wounded and sick and whatever, and he does herbs and all this sort of stuff. He's very nice that way. So when I designed Sinnit, and it's funny he's not a nurse shark. I just like the bamboo shark, so that was why. That would have been a funny pun, but no. I did look up, like, historic doctor's outfits and nurse outfits, and I fell in love with that sort of triangular white collar that they have in the nurse's outfits. So I wanted to carry that specific over, right? And because it gives that sort of vibe of he is a medical guy, right? The white is very important there. It's kind of like this bib to shield him and everything like that. And that was very important to the vibe. Now, it carries over to his backstory because it does matter what clothes and stuff they wore and would have had access to before becoming pirates, right? As to what their outfits do look like now. But it more had to do with the fact that he is a medic because of what his background is, right? So his background influenced his current position, which thus influenced his outfit and design. There's also the bigger thing, I think the biggest thing that I did with the characters is their hair. When you look at all their hair, you have wild, untamed mane Milano. You have starting to grow a mullet Ferrix. You have definitely trimmed but messy Aster. And you have ponytailed Sinnit and finally braided Hotson. And this very much ties into their upbringing and their current personality. Milano's a very wild man. Now, when we get into his backstory, you'll see a little more of that. But he's a very wild man. So he has a wild mane of hair, right? He doesn't really deal with it. He just let it grow out. It's whatever. He's beautiful. I love it. Top tier. But he doesn't even ponytail it up, right? He doesn't pull it back or anything. He just lets it all fly. That is sort of this wild at nature thing. He wants to be free. It does have to do with his background in sort of this kind of rebellious way a little bit, you could say.
Oh, definitely.
Ferrix is sort of similar. Ferrix takes after Milano in a lot of ways. Ferrix didn't grow up necessarily rebelling in the same way that Milano was definitely rebelling from his family and from his background. But once he sort of got into with Milano and everything, he definitely was feeling a bit more free, and so he's letting it grow out sort of slowly, right? But it's sort of definitely messier. Aster, on the other hand, grew up not overly well-groomed, not like high-end society or anything like that, but definitely you took care of yourself. And that was never something that he needed to rebel against. That wasn't the deal that caused him to leave and be a pirate and be free in that sort of sense. So thus his hair is more well kept. He obviously would have to trim it at some point, to keep it at that length so it doesn't just grow out and ruly like Milano's, but it does
requires maintenance.
Yeah, it does require a little maintenance. Then you have Sinnit, which, while Sinnit does have longer hair that he doesn't cut, he puts the effort into putting it into a ponytail. And now when you look back historically, that's like a very kempt thing, right? Like, you're definitely keeping yourself put together and everything when you are a man that ties it to the ponytail. It's definitely what James, did we say, from Liberty Kids? Very that vibe,
yeah,
right?
definitely.
And when you look at James from Liberty Kids, he's put together, right? He's a put together young man. He has this vest, he has the tied hair, like it is a sign of put together. It's not being unruly. And finally, you have
supposed to be 13.
Yeah, we don't get into this. we don't need to. But last but not least, we have Hotson, who a lot of his outfit, a lot of his choices, a lot of his speaking, which I'll hand off to Mars in a second, is all surrounded by him being, I wouldn't necessarily say upper class, but definitely, you know, he's not this unruly pirate guy. Like, he was stranded here. He didn't intend to do this, right? He's much more of the gentleman, you know, sort of thing. He was put together. He wore
The gentleman
the
pirate.
jacket. Yeah, exactly. He wore the jacket. He has all these ruffles, so he's definitely not hard up on money or anything from his upbringing, from his background. And last but not least, he braids his hair, which is the most upkeep required. So he has the longest hair, technically overall, mathematically, when you think about it. He has
Which
this
also requires
side,
a lot of upkeep.
yeah, which
speaking
took
from
a lot of
experience.
upkeep. He has the side shave, and he has it braided. So he is the most put together, and some might say uptight, of the entire group, right? And that, I think, is the biggest sort of thought I put into all of their designs with that. Now, of course, the designs do have to do with, like, the animals they're a part of for all of the collars, right? Like, you know, what sort of things they were doing, and sort of their look. That mostly had to do with Aster and Ferrex, who both have fur or feathers of some sort, that it does matter. But those were the biggest things, I think, about the sort of character design that I really put a lot of effort into. Their background, their reasoning for that was with the hair, because that's something you keep more, right? Like, clothes can change, clothes are ephemeral, you know, when you're outside of a comic or a TV show, you're changing your clothes a lot more often, 90% of the time, than
At least
those
we
characters
hope
do.
you are.
Yeah, than those characters do. So, it is that sort of thing. Now, like I mentioned before briefly, is that dialect also has to do with background, upbringing, and just sort of phrasing of dialogue, and that's what Mars does. So that is a part of character design, is how your character talks. You know, when you have a character that needs to talk, it does matter. And so I'll let Mars talk more about that.
Most characters do need to talk, so it does become a pretty important element. But thank you for that lead-in, Ori. So when it comes to characters' dialect, I think Ori summed it up best. It is a reflection of the character's background, their experiences, and maybe even a little bit of how they perceive themselves. Because if you think about it, like, we don't always talk in the same way to everyone that we meet, right? Like, you don't talk to your boss the same way you talk with a friend, right? You're doing what's called code switching. You're using a different style of speaking depending on who you're talking to. That was something that I myself really wanted to work into this comic. I have gone on and on many times on here about, you know, keeping things real, because, you know, the more real you can get, the more relatable it is. Not so much with the scenarios and everything, but if the emotions hold real and if the characters are doing some kind of relatable, that's where it lays. But in terms of dialect, so Hotson is probably the best example for this, because like Ori said, his design, his demeanor does indicate, you know, a relatively good upbringing. He's very well put together. His hair reflects that in the length, the style. Ori went into that, so I'm not going to divulge too much here, but you get the idea. So it makes sense that the dialogue as well would reflect that. But then we go like one step deeper, because dialogue is not just about reflecting what's on the outside, it's also about showing what's on the inside with a character. So Hotson, on the surface, is a researcher. We know this from entry 1. He's going to this island. His dad's wishing him luck with this new journal. We know he has a scientific mind, and he's very logical about things. So his way of speaking is very concise is not the word I want to use. That's definitely not the word I want to use. But his way of speaking is very constructed, I'll say. Actually, he kind of talks like how I'm talking now, explaining things in full detail, kind of like he doesn't really mince words. Oh, sure, he gets nervous, but like all the details are there, all the pieces are there. You're not going to see him leaving endings off of words. You're not going to see him
He's not using slang.
He's not using slang. Thank you. That's the word I'm searching for. It's been a long day.
It's okay.
I'll
forgive you.
But that is key to who Hotson is, because it's a reflection of his upbringing, sure, but it's also a reflection of how he himself wants to be perceived. Think about this for yourselves. When you give a presentation, you're talking a little more deliberately. Maybe you're enunciating
deliberately.
A bit more. Maybe you're deliberately. Yeah, honestly, that is the word for Hotson. Where was I going with that point? Hang on, give me a sec.
Sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. I'm glad we're able to confirm what word I wanted to use. Okay, I know where I was going with that. So, that's what you do when you talk during a presentation. Like, you kind of fake it till you make it, you know? But it's a very deliberate way of speaking. That was my intent with writing Hotson's dialogue. I wanted to put him in a position where he's kind of faking it till he makes it. He is new to this. He's never been on a research expedition before. He's never really sailed a ship before. He managed to strand himself on his first
He's never
expedition.
gotten marooned before. He's never...
Exactly. He is very much out of his element. But he is trying so desperately to keep up that researcher persona, because that is how he wants to be perceived. That is, at this point in time, his end goal, because that's where his drive comes from. He wants to be a researcher, so he's doing everything in his power to say, like, yes, I'm a researcher. I know the lingo. I know what to say. I know the scientific terms. I know how research is worded. Exactly.
Right. He definitely has...
This is how Ori and I differ in talking. Ori is very straight and to the point. I use a lot of different words to say the exact same thing over and over.
What I wanted to say, Lakitu, I don't have chronic presentation anxiety. It's okay, PCM. We're happy to have you.
Yeah,
what
no
I actually
worries,
get
PCM.
Lakitu, which I hate, absolutely hate. I am fine with public speaking if I get to, like, prepare for it a little bit, right? Or if it's something that I'm very knowledgeable about. I'm very proud of my public speaking. However, my body doesn't agree. So I have done many presentations, in school and college and whatever, and I have practiced. I'm very confident. I'm very ready. I get up there literally shaking, like actually shaking. Like I have to prevent my voice from waving. My mind? Yeah, you're chill. You got this, bitch. You can do this. Go queen. Go top. Knees fucking knocking together. I don't know why. I don't know what the problem is.
You got some conflicting flight or fight happening there.
It's the worst thing. It is a lot of adrenaline, I guess, where my brain is like, yeah, no, you got this. You studied. You have the whole freaking thing memorized. You got no problems. Freaking nail it. 90s on everything. But... No. You go up there and you're just like heart palpitations, absolutely shaking. Like, oh my god, I don't know. I hate it. Horrible. Terrible.
Brief tangent there.
Yeah.
I used to have such bad anxiety over presenting. It got so bad that in middle school I literally cried while giving an oral presentation.
That just makes it worse.
Story,
no, that just makes it worse.
Oh, does anyone want story time? Yeah, I can expose myself as
That's a
a
vibe,
terrible
Lakitu, though.
presenter.
That is a vibe. I've never felt a problem like doing recitals or plays. That is very accurate.
Here's the difference I found with recitals and plays, because I've done dance recitals. I can't see the audience because the lights are so friggin'
That is
bright.
also true, isn't it? You're not
Like,
really looking at
I
anybody.
know the audience is there, but I cannot see shit. So it's like, oh, I'm just trying to not squint and look ugly because of how much these lights are killing my eyes.
It's very funny you bring up Phoenix pastry. This is really funny. I'm gonna expose Dylan a little bit, but I think he'll be okay. I think Dylan is very much Phoenix right 90% of the time. He does one thing that Phoenix doesn't do, which causes this whole thing, but so thus he's better than Phoenix. But the whole thing is that Dylan has had glowing remarks, glowing, like, almost very little criticism by actual judges, actual other lawyers, about his actual speaking as a lawyer, like on the stand, like during trial, like during mock trial. You know, he's like gotten awards about that. In his interview, it was nothing but incredible remarks. However, he goes into that a nervous fucking wreck. The whole time before that, nervous wreck. Every moment before he starts talking, nervous wreck. That gives me such Phoenix vibes. Now the reason that he's better than Phoenix is that being a nervous wreck, right, that he prepares way more than Phoenix does. He actually prepares his arguments and his statements and his closing remarks. But Phoenix doesn't do that.
Phoenix just wings it,
but it's
and it
definitely,
works out.
but it's definitely the same vibe of the incredible bundle of nerves and nervousness on the inside, but somehow killing it on the outside. That is very much Dylan there, and that's why I think it's funny.
Hey, if you can do that, you got it made.
It's definitely one of those, like, I don't know if you ever were talked about in health class, those sort of like the good stress versus the bad stress, right? And the good stress is you're stressing out of the test, so you put all your effort into studying. That's what Dylan has. Dylan has the good stress of you know, stressing out about this presentation, so he spends tons of hours practicing in the mirror and memorizing stuff he doesn't have to memorize, and et cetera, right? So he was built for lawyering. Everybody in his life for his entire life knew he was built for lawyering. He said, haha, nah, bitch, ain't doing that, and then he ended up being a lawyer. So, you know.
You know, it worked out in the end.
You know, life finds a way.
Life finds a way.
I had a question, Mars. About the sort of dialect thing. You talked about code switching briefly.
Oh,
and I'm curious.
Don't worry, Lakitu.
No, Lakitu, Pastry Puff, everybody else, PCM in chat. You are welcome to interrupt with anything at any point in time. I want you guys to know that these little Comic Corner sessions are not prepared well 90% of the time. It's literally like, here is a topic, and one of us like kind of barely thinks about it, maybe the like before stream, like a little bit, maybe like sometimes. So asking any questions is welcome. Asking anything, you can interrupt.
Maybe that could be a testament to our skill that we can talk on it with so little preparation.
Well,
I feel like that's helped me in doing presentations in my major to be on it.
That is also true.
Except there, I'm way more practiced.
But what I was gonna ask is, do you feel like code switching is necessarily the same thing as speaking more formally? Now, in English, we don't have this as specifically as a lot of other languages do, but a good example is in Spanish, right? You have tú, and you have usted, right? So usted is, at least when we were taught in Spanish class, I don't know how accurate it is, but usted is the very formal form of you, right? I know in Japan they do a lot of that. Like there's some very formal words and things you say to people that are very much like your boss or someone you don't know at all, or, you know, things like that, or maybe like your grandparents. But you know, talking to your friend, they would find that really weird if I called Mars usted in Spanish. That would be very odd. That would be like, I don't know her. It's kind of very weird. In English, we don't have that as blatantly, I find. Like, we don't have two different words for you depending on how formal you are. It is you no matter what. But, you know, saying things like sir, or calling certain people Mr. or Ms., right? You know, like if I was to suddenly call Mars Ms. Mars, that would be kind of odd if I wasn't doing like a joke, right? That would be kind of weird. Is that code switching, or is that just a more formal way of speaking?
Code switching is very interesting. I see what you're saying when you compare it to other language, and this is what makes English so unique, I'll say.
Wonky.
Is that, well, wonky indeed. But in the examples you gave, and you could throw Japanese in there as well, because they do this as well.
I know you have Japanese experience. I don't.
Well, yeah, I do. And let me tell you, the difference between formal and informal, it doesn't get any more night and day than that. And when you consider like having to switch that up depending on who you're talking to, it sounds like a foreign concept to English speakers, because it's kind of like you said, Ori, where it's like, well, you just say you whenever you're talking to someone. But let's say I'm talking, maybe I'm talking to somebody about I'm trying to think of something. Maybe I'm talking to them about how to write an essay. Let's say I'm talking to a teacher and I'll say, "Oh, how do you do this? I was going to write it like that." And you see what I'm doing here? I'm saying you fully. I'm saying going to. But if I was talking to you about writing an essay, then I might say, "Well, what do you think of this? I was gonna write that, but now I'm not so sure." You hear the difference?
Mm-hmm.
I'm cutting it short. I'm not enunciating. I'm putting weaker endings on the ends of you, and I'm also combining words. Like what do ya instead of what do you? Because that's informal. And the reason it's considered code switching is because I am changing my mannerism based on who I am talking to. And it can be conscious. It can be a conscious choice. Certainly, there are times when that happens. It goes back to the giving a presentation example, or, you know, when you're in an academic setting, you suddenly start following those speech patterns a bit more.
Okay.
Or it could be subconscious. You just automatically fall into that speech pattern without realizing it. And that's because, let's be honest, society trains you very well to code switch. You start learning how to do it in school when you start learning about grammar and presentations in general.
So I have an interesting example that to see
please.
if you would consider this one way or not. In Ace Attorney, we meet a man that you all know have played Ace Attorney with us. His name is Max Galactica, and Max Galactica talks very classically, I guess, very regular person. You know, with the he does have the darlings and the sweeties and the whatever, but there's a point that is very explicitly shown in the game, at least 2 or 3 times, if not more, where he literally switches into a country drawl. Where he specifically, when he's getting very nervous, switches into a country drawl. That would be code switching, yes?
That is absolutely code switching, because if we look at that context surrounding the character, he grew up on, like, I'm going to say on a farm.
He grew up on a farm.
With that dialect, so that's why he has that. And when he entered showbiz, I would assume, at least if we were to take a real world scenario, I need to adopt a more theatric dialect for this persona, because a country dialect isn't going to work in this dramatic setting. That was if the character was real, that would be a very conscious decision. Kind of like I've heard stories about news anchors having to learn
Exactly,
a very
yes,
specific
I was gonna mention
news
that.
anchor dialect.
No, it is called the TV accent. It is
The
an
TV accent.
It is an
Thank you.
accent. It is it's called the American neutral accent.
American
and it is,
neutral.
It is what
yes.
every actor or actress or news anchor
Every
or
actor,
telecaster
every actress, anyone on
taught
TV, essentially.
to adopt in order to speak that way on TV. However, this accent hails from nowhere. You cannot travel to a part of America that has this accent. It doesn't exist outside of television.
Because it's not natural.
It used to be called, when we were more influenced by England and in the earlier sort of days of television and radio, there was something called the transcontinental accent, which sort of started this. But that was a little more British, and it kind of was upbeat, and it's, all this sort of thing. And it had a bit more of the rounded vowel, but it was kind of in, that sort of thing. We've moved away from that. We definitely have a very American TV accent, the American neutral accent. But,
for sure.
That is something that is specifically done. And this is another interesting thing with accent that comes up with our characters in the Outcast.
Okay.
Well, no, not the American neutral.
I noticed you're using accent and dialect interchangeably, and they are not interchangeable.
Okay. The show I watched
I don't know if you want me
different.
to go into that. It's not too long, so I could, but if you don't want me to go into that, stop me now.
Well, I won't say a word. More the idea that our characters, some of them have both, right? So, some of them are written to have both, and sort of the idea that the classic Southern, both dialect and accent, I would say, because they have a lot of words, right? I'm assuming dialect is with words and accent is with how you say words. Is that correct?
So the difference between dialect and accent. Dialect is regional. You can find different dialects within a single country. For example, in the US, you have African American English, you have Southern, you have Midwestern, you have the Long Island dialect. But it's regional. It's still within the same country. Now, if you were talking about somebody from, let's say, France who came to America and learned English, their English production would always have that French accent in it. So that's not regional, that's international. And that's the difference.
Wow, we very colloquially use these words wrong, but
yeah, it drives. I gotta say, after learning that, it doesn't drive me crazy, but there is that little ping in your head when you hear it, and you're like, yeah,
so
not correct, and I know different.
There are certain dialects, and I would say sometimes certain accents, but definitely, when we're speaking of America, certain dialects, that are considered less educated, based on as sort of a stereotype. The big one is the Southern.
Very
one,
much so.
Right, the classic Southern with the y'all and the drawl and all that sort of stuff. It is a lot of people, in especially the business world and sort of higher education, take lessons to specifically train that out of their way of speaking, because it is it's really sad, stereotyped to be that you are less educated when you have an accent like that.
I will say this, it is something now. I cannot speak for companies. I do not think they are getting any better, but schools are definitely making more of an effort to accept a variety of dialects. There are now books being published that feature certain dialects. It's being taught in classrooms, and it's a really good push for diversity. It's fantastic.
Well, and so
it's definitely going to take a bit longer to get companies on board, though.
But sort of with that, we sort of do have that sort of idea with how Outcast is set up, right? There are definitely less articulated, ways of speaking, dialects throughout the characters, depending on how they grew up, where they grew up, what they were taught, and more than anything else, their parents or caretakers' views. Right? When we think about the backgrounds of our characters, the reasons that Hoatson's is mostly his own doing, everybody else is
Hoatson's, I feel like, is a combination of how he grew up and also how he wants to be perceived.
Yeah, exactly.
Because
he's not free.
Let's take me. Let's take me, for example, a budding SLP. I do want to sound smart and intelligent when I talk to someone about my major because I want to show them I know what I'm talking about. And the only way I can do that and be taken seriously is if I sound very articulate, very confident, very put together and planned. Like, oh wow, she really knows this stuff. That's the vibe Hotson has.
And
I feel personally
interesting about the way you gave that example, which I'm gonna lean off on here, is that I used to work in sales essentially, and this is something that came up. Was that when you look at especially cars salesmen on TV, they don't speak with the American neutral accent. They speak dialect. They speak with the dialect of the place that they are selling cars at. Specifically, you watch any car salesman commercial and they are speaking with one of the thickest dialects from that area that they can have every time without fail. And the reason why is this is because they are trying to sell you something. And if you associate them with being your regular average Joe, you are more likely to give them your money. And so now I worked in sales. I worked for selling tree care services. So if now, honestly, the Long Island accent is weird. A dialect is very weird, where sometimes people have it, sometimes people don't. Sometimes they conflate it with the Brooklyn accent, and it's like, and like the Queens accent, really. And it's like, it really matters where you're from. So all this sort of stuff. But the idea is that, so you don't really do that as much, but you can definitely tell my supervisor, my manager, he didn't go to school for tree care or tree biology or anything like that. He was all, like apprenticeship and learning on the job and everything like that. He didn't go to college for this. He is a New Yorker from the city, so he speaks with a more Brooklyn accent and everything like that. So everybody really shines up to him, right? Like they really like him. He's very down to their versus, I have a lighter than when someone talks about the Long Island accent, I don't have that, right? I'm definitely further from that. And
I don't think I have it either, to be honest.
No, it's a very East
Maybe
End
when I
thing.
say coffee, but I don't know.
No, when they say coffee, it's I don't know. I this is a whole thing.
Like coffee.
Yeah, with the. Yeah, I don't know.
It's like coffee versus coffee.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't even
really.
Know. But
it's interesting.
The point
you
is
probably
that,
do a whole thesis on it.
Yeah, versus being in academia, it's more important to sound educated and to sound like what you're talking about, by sounding metered and specific and calculated, versus in the sales. You need to know what you're talking about, but you need to know what you're talking about because I've lived it, man, because I know what's up, because I'm the guy that's been out there doing the thing, so that's the whole, I'm talking with people, and after a certain point, they don't want you to call, the amount of clients I had that don't want me to call them Mr. So-and-so, Ms. So-and-so, Ms. whatever, and honestly, it's very difficult for me, because on top of that, I was in a field very young. I was in this field. I was probably the youngest salesperson for the whole division. No, literally. And so everybody I'm interacting with is significantly older than me. Because if they're owning a house, they're gonna be significantly older than me. Okay, so it was a very weird thing to be told by these incredibly rich like influential old men. Yeah, call me Dave. And it's like, this feels wrong. This feels really wrong.
This feels disrespectful.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm gonna get in trouble.
Like I'm gonna get, like, no matter how many times. It's very funny. The ones I was most comfortable with, though, were the caretakers of the properties of these very rich, wealthy men, right? So I wouldn't work with Mr. Reichenbach or whatever, but I would work with his caretaker, Charlie. And even though Charlie is like, 62 and I'm 24, it's like, yeah, call me Charlie, and that's it. That's just how it is. So it's a very interesting thing there. But that's how the dialects sort of, and on top of that, the dialects do also pertain that all our outcast characters don't come from the same place.
Oh yeah, for sure. They're from
in the world,
all kinds of walks of life.
Yeah.
And that's like even ignoring what kind of animal they are, it also comes down to like how they were brought up, how they perceive
a lot
the
of their
world
parents'
around them.
views.
Oh, definitely, for sure.
But the funniest thing we talked
one
about.
great example I could use for code switching.
Yes, I know who. Go ahead.
You know who?
If it's Outcast, yeah. Of course I do.
It's Ferrix. I'm sure you knew that. It's Ferrix. I thought, okay, so Ferrix's deal, as we know so far in the story, is that upon reading his dialogue, he talks very similarly to Milano. Maybe even has more of a dialect than Milano does. So it does fit, the theme, the whole angle of pirates and being this like very carefree, I'm dropping the endings off of all my words, I'm just like saying captain and fledgling and stuff like that. Yeah, exactly. We were thinking of but then we were like, no one will be able to read that. That's another thing you have to balance, but that's a discussion for another day.
It'll also be very evident when we dub the comic.
Oh,
which
yeah.
will be happening soon because we're almost getting through entry 2. We're
kind of crazy,
2.
honestly. But back to the point.
Scarily close, but yeah.
Is that at one point, now this is something that has not happened in the comic yet, but there is a moment where Ferrix drops the dialect and starts having a serious conversation with someone. And all of a sudden, his dialect has indeed code switched. He's using you. He's leaving the endings on. He is being very serious in this particular moment. And the reason I, as a writer, chose to have it that way was because I really wanted to illustrate to the audience, on the surface level, that when push comes to shove, Ferrix is going to essentially step up to the plate to defend what he cares about. So that's kind of the surface level stuff. But then you also have some deeper meaning behind it in that, well, if that's his natural dialect, what was all that stuff from earlier? Could it be a bit of a facade? Does Ferrix have a little bit of fake it till you make it going on? Is he maybe not so confident in himself that he's putting on airs a little similarly to Hotson? So little breadcrumbs there.
This is a very funny thing that sort of happened. This is a slight, tiny side tangent. Is that for certain websites and stuff where we post the comic, I had to make this banner that was very long, like lengthwise, in order for it to fit into the restrictions that the places wanted. And so I was coming up with a lot of blank space. And so I was looking at other other comics, you know, sort of banners and stuff to try and see like what could I put there, and a lot of them had like taglines, and we hadn't really talked about a tagline or anything like that, but I sort of came up with this tagline that is honestly way too fitting for like 100 different reasons. But I just think it's interesting here where we're talking about Ferrix being, you know, maybe he's putting on airs too. It's not as different as we seem. And I think that just the vibe is
Doesn't
like
that sum up
80
the series
fucking
perfectly?
layers. There's layers you don't know about. There's layers we know about. There's so many layers.
There's
So many layers.
honestly, that was the whole goal. I mean, I think it's safe to say at this point, I love my layers. I love my hitting meanings. I love my double meanings. And
Triple decker sandwich meanings. All of the meanings.
it's not only in the artwork, it is in the dialogue, it is in the interactions, it is everywhere.
It's in the everything, guys. The everything.
But what was that question you were going to ask earlier, Ori?
We talked about dialect and stuff with the and the Ferrix. Hold on, it'll come back. It'll happen.
I know before that I mentioned having to pick and choose our words carefully so it was still readable. Was it pertaining to that?
No. Oh, okay. This is something I want to talk that Mars and I had sort of like world built a little bit that I think is fine to mention because I think is really interesting. Very basically, the world that Outcast is a part of is a lot of islands. It's like a big island archipelago chain sort of thing. So it's just a lot of islands. There's not like a really super big mainland. It's a lot of islands. And okay, we'll wait for the next message pastry and then I'll read the whole thing. And the one and so this, because they're islands, they would have, you know, different dialects, because that's the best place to have dialects, is on different islands and things like that. But there is one group that goes between the islands the most and travels the most, and that is the military. And so we actually have something canonically in the Outcast world that is just like the TV dialect, it's the military dialect. And that's the really fun thing, right? So it does matter what island you come on, but also if you are part of the military, part of the naval force, part of that, you know, like as family or you're a military brat or anything like that, you have this military dialect, because at least something I learned, Mars, and now I could be wrong because I'm not in school for this and I'm just going off of like TV and the internet or something, is that a lot of your dialect is learned from not necessarily even your parents, but the children you interact with when you're young.
Oh yes,
And so-
exposure is a critical part of language learning.
So we're not talking about people that necessarily join the military partway through. I mean, they do probably defect their dialect a little bit. You know, I know my grandmother is from England, and she, while still has some of that English, I think it's an accent now, it has, you know, toned down a lot more. I also found this was very
It would
interesting.
indeed be an accent.
Okay, I visited the Netherlands, where they speak Dutch, and so they have a specific accent, and Dylan actually mentioned that when I talked with him on the phone, I had like affected a little bit of this sort of European vibe that was very just sort of like, because everybody I'm talking to is like they speak Dutch or they speak German and they learned English, so they all have this very specific like, you know, I couldn't personally tell you the difference between the Netherlands or the Belgium accent or anything like that, but like this sort of European, you know, Germanic language accent that was sort of in it. And, you know, it went away very quickly after, like, coming home. But he said on the phone that was, like, what I sounded like. Because, our tour guide, you know... Well, but it was our tour guide. And then, like, we had two people that were from Spain that spoke English. So, like, I'm surrounded by all these people that are talking with much more rounded vowels, but much more sort of a little on the nasally side. It was a whole thing, but I don't know if I could do it now. And it was just something that sort of happened. And so, you know, I would never be considered a native in that sort of sense. But it is the idea that, like, you do pick it up with your ear a little bit. And so that is sort of what's interesting about in Outcast, the sort of different dialects, is that with this naval, this military dialect, that it is the children born to the families of the Navy after, you know, a couple generations that are the ones that are perpetuating this. It's not people who necessarily as much join the military later in life.
The mainland.
Okay, well, I gotta read Pastry Puff's thing, but you may talk, Mars, if you want.
Yeah, you pretty much covered it all there. And then there's some other things going on in dialogue that don't necessarily pertain to dialect. Like Sinnit, for example, he talks very formally, similar to Hotson.
That'll be fun, Pastry Puff. I'll have to look for them.
He's very much kind of got like maybe a little bit of a people pleaser thing going on. In that, actually it fits the description I used earlier. He uses a lot of words to say very little. That was just the kind of personality he has. Now, that's not a dialect thing. That's a characteristic. That's just a personality trait. But it is something that shows up in the dialogue. His dialogues are mostly longer. I think the longest, aside from
maybe Sinnit,
Hotson and Milano.
Oh yeah.
I'm talking about Sinnit.
No. I'm sorry, I got mixed up. Hotson is what I wanted to say. Milano does talk a lot, but
definitely got the nervous energy. But
yes.
He's still quick to get his point out. He's not blunt, but he'll like say what he needs to say. Meanwhile, Sid's like, he kind of talks in
Sinnit's customer
circles,
service
but he's
style.
definitely the customer service.
Yeah, that's a very big part of Sinnit's whole deal.
I see Hotson as being the, I will get you your item, whereas Sinnit is, okay, I will get you your item. Just hold on one moment. Like,
yep, I'm sorry this is taking so long. Don't worry, I'll be back soon. It's okay. He's very Midwest goodbye.
Oh yes.
He's very Midwest goodbye. And you'll learn why.
Oh yeah, you definitely learn why. I'm actually working on the Sinnit hangout right now, and falling in love with the boy all over again.
I have to draw Milano outside of the comic because there's so much not Milano in the comic where I'm like drawing it right now, so I'm like, I have to do him. No, it's more like
you're my boy.
This is Mermay art for Mermay, and it is May, and it is due tomorrow because it is for a Webtoon Canvas Creator event thing. So yeah.
Also, Ori, do you have enough journal?
I think so.
Scribble?
Yeah, I think
do
we're
you
good.
need more?
I mean, if you have more on the brain, I won't say no, but I think I'm pretty good.
Okay. Like anything specific you'd like me to talk about?
I don't think you had one about him being cooperative, did you?
No, I definitely
I would say
didn't.
that's the only thing I would add. Sort of surprised at how cooperative he is. Because then it compares really to everybody else when we get to them later on. But yeah, does anybody have any questions about literally anything you want? About character design? About character background? Through design in any way? About character design in any way? Literally anything else? Our favorite chocolate bar and what temperature we like to eat it at? Who knows?
It could literally be anything.
It can be whatever your little heart's desire.
You got a half hour left. Now's your chance.
Now's your chance. If you were worried about throwing us off topic, no longer.
There's no chance.
No
of
more
that.
fear. We have exhausted our ad lib abilities on this topic.
Well, I think I could talk a little bit about costuming, because even though I'm not a part of that aspect of the design process. Like sometimes I do
Of
weigh
course,
in
Pastry
my
Puff.
2 cents. Oh, I love orcas. And if the reason you bring up orcas is because of what's recently been happening in the news, power to the orcas, man.
What
You
have
know,
they been doing in the news?
Oh, you haven't heard?
No, if I'm being completely honest to everybody here, I don't watch the news.
I don't watch the news either.
I don't pay
get
attention
all
to
my
any of
news
the-
from Instagram.
I get my news from
is
Dylan
sad.
when he decides to tell me about it. That's it. And so
Okay.
usually it's not orca related stuff, if I'm being completely honest.
Ori, to catch you up to speed, orcas have started attacking ships.
Ah. Yeah, they've been
if I'm
known to be pretty
remembering-
aggressive.
If I'm remembering correctly, I think scientists are speculating this happened because there was a female orca that was traumatized by a run-in with a boat, and now, again, if I'm remembering correctly, I think she's teaching her offspring to like ram into the boats.
Ooh.
So the whole article was about like orcas are teaching each other how to sink boats.
Nice.
And at least from the Instagram post I was reading, everyone in the comments was like, "Yeah, go orcas!"
Well, you know, if we ain't gonna be able to make environmental change without the animals fighting back, fight back! I ain't going any place where there's orcas gonna sink my ship, you know?
This is something I've always believed. If you're going into the animal's territory, don't be fucking surprised when the animal attacks.
When they don't
You
like
are
it.
in their territory. You are in the wrong place.
Yeah, but PCM, are you going to be in a place where orcas are, though?
Yeah, see, that's the key.
Oh, there you go.
It got
funny
even
little Ace
funnier.
Attorney meme. Pastry Puff, I hope you also ship Rightworth, but there's just a very funny video I saw, and it was essentially just, what's the word? It was very sus until it turned out that Edgeworth was just giving Phoenix a back rub. And it was voiced by ProZD, which was great. So,
Oh,
top-tier-
nice.
Top-tier stuff. It was very funny.
And
We lost
it got
that
even
scene.
funnier on Instagram because there was
It's beautiful, Pastry
I'm
Puff. I
trying to
love it.
remember who it was. I think it was Elon Musk. It was like, oh, Elon Musk just got a new yacht and is taking it out. So someone in the comments was like, hey, does anyone know how to telepathically communicate
Can I
with
tell
orcas?
you?
Asking for a friend.
Okay, can I tell you about Elon Musk's yacht? Can I talk about this yacht? This is hilarious. About
If
what he
you
did about
really
the yacht.
want to,
No.
sure.
So when I was in the Netherlands, I visited the city and the port where his yacht was built. Okay? So his yacht was built in a city called Rotterdam. Okay? Unfortunately, Rotterdam was incredibly decimated during the World War, and so really bad. And it's probably one of the most modern looking cities in the Netherlands because of that, because it was essentially leveled by firebombs. Very disappointing. So it was very nice. A lot of people were very happy that Elon Musk was going to build his super mega crazy yacht in Rotterdam. Was it? Oh, maybe I'm thinking of Bezos. I might be thinking of Bezos.
I
think I'm
forget if
thinking
it
of
was Elon
Bezos.
Musk or Bezos.
I think I'm
to
thinking
be
of
honest.
Bezos, but I think I'm thinking of Bezos. But Bezos
just-
essentially built a
they-
super yacht.
They all merge into one asshole.
Yeah, they're all one rich asshole, so we're good. But it was so tall that it didn't fit under their bridge in the harbor.
Oh,
Okay.
I remember that.
It didn't fit under the bridge in the harbor. And so, I'm pretty sure it was Bezos, was like, hey, I will literally pay to demolish, like, to take out the section of the bridge and put it back. Okay, like, I will pay this money to do that, to get my yacht out. Essentially,
So pathetic.
everybody in Rotterdam went, the fuck you will, and do you know why? It's because that's one of the last standing things from Rotterdam from before the war. They don't even use it very much. It is a rail bridge, but it is a icon of
It's a
something that stayed.
historical
It's historic.
landmark.
And he's like, we'll put it back.
So
He's like,
leave it
I
the
don't
fuck
care.
alone.
You're not fucking touching that. No matter how much you pay us, don't you dare touch our bridge. So what he actually had to do is he had to take the boat apart again, move it to the other side, and put it back together.
Now that's the thing of beauty.
It's so good. I just love the idea of a city just coming together to be like fuck you. Like, fuck
Literally,
you,
like
Will.
the fuck you thing.
I love
I
that
don't
though.
think so.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Amazing. But
Oh,
I'm not sure if that's what you were referring to when you said orcas pastry puff. I do like orcas. They're very pretty animals.
any thought process on changes
like
to
the
character
markings.
designs was Grastic and Settle? Okay, Lakitu, I was talking about with this Mars today, actually. I
Good timing, honestly.
love I love the idea of outfit changes, of temporary outfit changes. Okay, I read a couple comics that do this. We've been watching, Rapunzel's Tangled Adventure that does this. They have character outfit changes for certain locations and certain times.
Spy X Family
they
also
switch back
does
and
it
forth.
a lot too.
Yeah, Spy X Family does change a lot based on things, but they do all have their one iconic outfit that they do sort of go back to, and everything is sort of, tangentially related to. I love that idea. I love that idea a lot. It is important to have a balance of how often you do that, but it does, and I think the biggest thing for me is that it matters to the story. A good example is I read this comic that I'm trying to remember the name of, and I really cannot, but essentially the idea is that they go through a bunch of different fairy tale stories. So every time they go into a new fairy tale story, they get a new outfit, right? And now this is expected because this is how it's set up and this is how it works. And I'm so sorry, PCM. I'm sorry that they just changed from indecision. But so you expect this, but the whole point is that it's to fit in with the place that they're going to, right? You can think about this as that in the Magic Treehouse books, when they're teleported around in time, they're teleported and they have new outfits that fit the time period that they are in and the location that they are in. I
The
love that.
clothing to match.
Exactly. I love that a lot. Okay, I think that's a very fun thing to do. I do think it's important to have that base design to, one, work off of in the first place, because it's important to keep a general vibe. This can be done very well with colors and shape, language, and everything like that. The other thing, I think, is that you have to, come back to that reset point, right? If your character isn't specifically known to change their clothes, but they're kept within a design, coming back, honestly, I think they all do it. My example is another one. Steed in Our Flank Means Death. He wears a lot of very frilly, very fun outfits that honestly envy. But he always comes back to that iconic blue one, right? After a little bit away from that, he wears it again. After he's he wears something completely different, is really wild and very important to the storytelling and what he is in his mind going through and he in his life is going through, he comes back to this specific blue outfit, right? I think that's very important to the changing character design. Same with Spy X Family, right? Yor has her specific black dress, Yor has her red sweater and everything and headband that she wears around the house. Same with Lloyd, he has the green suit with the hat. They come back to this outfit over and over again, so at least everybody has sort of that starting point to do it. The really drastic ones I think that happens are stuff that can't change very often. Adding a facial scar or a very visible scar is a very permanent thing, right? So that has to happen most of the time, unless you're writing specifically like a comedy. I think it can be done very well if it's done meaningfully, right? I'm trying to remember the guy's name. Iruka Sensei in Naruto, we see how he gets like his scar because of the whole thing. It's very meaningful, right? Same with like Kakashi having like the chain, you know, that's very meaningful. A character cutting their hair usually should be very meaningful, unless it's set up where it's not going to be. Just because, you know, and I'm talking like significantly cutting their hair. I'm talking about like Milano going back to short hair, or, you know, Sinnett cutting his ponytail off. Like, that's a drastic change to the vibe, and so that's kind of an important thing. You know, Rapunzel getting her hair cut at the end of her movie Entangled, right? Like, that's a big deal sort of thing. But with
And then
that,
bring it back immediately after.
I think you do have to sort of keep, yeah, well, not immediately, you know, but, you know, you do sort of have to keep these through lines, right? I wouldn't necessarily suggest cutting the hair and completely redesigning the outfit to something incredibly different. You can have, like, a new thing, but unless that has to do, again, specifically with why they cut their hair, you know, it has to be very important. Does that make sense? So I think the end result is I love the idea of characters getting different outfits, because people have different outfits, and when they need to fit in to different places, I really love that. And as an artist, I like designing outfits. Like, come on, it's very fun to do. There's a reason I like making all these AUs, because it's fun putting the characters in new and different outfits. I literally today sketched Milano in 3 different outfits, 3 different stages throughout his life, because 1, it was a study, but 2, he looks fucking good. And so, you know, this sort of thing. I literally told Mars
amazing.
that the next comic we do does have to have that sort of vibe in it a little more
Costume
than these
changes
guys
every
did.
now and then.
Just because that's the thing. I don't think there's anything wrong with a character having an iconic outfit. I don't think there's any super negative to that, unless you're in the situation.
It works for the types of characters that we have, because they're pirates.
Yeah, it
They
doesn't.
probably don't have access to
They don't have
like
access.
a whole slew
They're
of
not
clothes.
necessarily trying to blend into all these different places, slash
Hmm.
the places, the areas of the places they're going to, they are blending in by being pirates, right? So it is like, it's already set that way. A good
Yeah.
example is, again, in Our Flag Means Death. They enter the pirate port, and Steed and the other guy put on
Well,
these very
Steve doesn't
lavish
fit in at all.
white outfits, right, to go into this pirate port. They specifically don't fit at all. Versus Blackbeard's outfit, he wears the one outfit except very specific time when they have to go fit into
The fucking biker jacket.
yeah, but
It's
except for one
amazing.
time when they have to fit into this high society thing, he would fit in all the places a pirate would go, right, just naturally. Versus Steed specifically would stick out if he didn't change, or if he did it up even more. So that's like the whole thing. So in our case, Hotsun specifically sticks out. When you look at his outfit design, it is very different from what they wear. But when you look at the other characters that is more from Hotsun's world, I guess, from Hotsun's backstory, you will see a little more of his style in their outfits than you do
Yeah.
with the callers. And there's a reason for that. There's this very specific intention with that. So
Everything with purpose.
I think unless
That's
you're yes, sorry. But I think the biggest exception you can have anywhere is that if it's your OC that isn't in something, right? You can redesign them as many times as you freaking want. Like, as ham as you want. Go ham. I think it only starts to matter that it has to be nailed down when you are doing stuff with them, right? If I just suddenly in the next panel, Milano has a very different outfit, it wouldn't work. Honestly, kind of wouldn't look like Milano. I don't think that's right. There has to be reason or precedence to it. Because when you look at Spy X Family, right? While Lloyd has his iconic green suit, they do wear different outfits. But the point is that they're supposed to be a normal family. So a normal family would wear different outfits, right? Like, so it's set up already, this precedence that these characters are gonna have changes in different outfits, but like I said, they all have their comfy or reset outfit that they go back to. Anya has her school uniform, and Lloyd has his suit, and Yor has her 2 different dresses. So I think that's the important thing. You have to have a home base when you're changing them all the time, versus drastic changes have to be important. There's my summary. Yeah. Do you have any opinion, Mars?
Definitely. I think costume changes are tons of fun. I share the same sentiment as Ori. I want to see our boys in a slew of outfits. I think the Beauty and the Beast outfits are my favorite, or the ballroom
really?
AU.
I love the ballroom.
Oh, ballroom AU is so good. Mostly because it has hallmarks we're already using.
Well,
it has
the
ruffles. It has the layers. So it's like, oh, we could have this in canon if we wanted.
And we might.
If the situation presented itself. It'd take us a while to get there, but it could happen.
We got at least 3 seasons, guys. This is only season 1.
I absolutely love character development. And I think it's not only fun when you show character development in, you know, how somebody's thought process changes, but your thought process can be reflected in your clothing. I'm actually going to take a real world example. Don't worry, it's just myself. All throughout middle school, I had a very specific outfit. All throughout 7th grade, not all throughout middle school. I did, well, I'll get to that character development. Basically, I wore jeans, either super dark wash or kind of lighter. Those were the 2 jeans I switched between. I had 2 different purple jackets. So one was dark purple with, like, I think it was 2 rhinestone hearts, and then the other was light purple with rhinestone butterflies on, like, the chest. And I had 2 pairs of fake Uggs. One was tan, one was brown. And I alternated between those every single day for 7th grade. Why the hell did I do that? I thought my shirts, like my t-shirts, my long sleeve shirts, I thought people would make fun of me for wearing them. I don't know why. I don't know how that thought got into my head, but for some reason, I felt the need to cover up. So I wore very baggy things, and I wore those clothes constantly, because that was my thought process at the time. Somebody's going to make fun of me. They're going to think my shirt is stupid for having this print on it. I'm just going to cover up and save myself the hassle. Now, eventually, that mindset did go away. And in 8th grade, I started being a little more confident. I was actually showing off my shirts. But because of that, my style changed. It was no longer baggy. It was no longer this constant, like, pattern of light purple jacket one day, dark purple the next, light purple again, then dark purple next. So yeah, middle schoolers do make fun of the dumbest stuff. Oh god, I could tell you horror stories, but I won't. But that's very much a case of my outward appearance was reflecting my inner thought process. So I think having characters do the same is incredibly interesting, incredibly engaging for the audience as well, because that's a visual representation of the character's mindset. Like, say, for example, you have a character who's constantly covering up very baggy clothing, and then all of a sudden, like, maybe in season 2, like, there's a big development that happens, and now maybe, like, they took off their jacket. Now you can see their arms. Maybe they're wearing shorts instead of pants now. Okay. Something has changed there. Something significant has changed. And you can see that visually.
I have a very specific preference in character design. I very much enjoy this very specifically. When a character has an outfit that is their outfit, but the outfit can be manipulated. What do I mean by this?
I think I know what you mean by that.
A comic I read is called Shiloh. It's very good. It's on Webtoon. It's an original. It's very good. There's a character. He always wears a coat. Okay, he is a sort of he's like a gun for hire mercenary kind of guy. He's very rugged. He's very this whole thing. He always wears this coat. There is a scene where he specifically takes off the coat and rolls up his sleeves. And now it is one, you have never seen this man's forearms before, so whew. But two, the point is that he has gotten down to business, right? This threat is one,
to show
serious. Two, yeah, he is not holding back anymore, right? He has removed the amount of fabric impeding him by doing this, right? Like, it's a very deliberate thing. So one of my favorite things is the fact, so I guess this is specifically identified in the fact of layers, okay? And this has translated into how I made these characters. They have their signature outfit. I can manipulate their outfit however I want because they all have layers. Milano has the jacket, the vest jacket, and then he has his shirt and his pants, right? So that's a layer. He can remove, he can manipulate, he can crop, sort of things, tuck in, untuck, these sort of things, very important. Now he doesn't have sleeves he can roll up, but that's intentional because of the kind of person he is. Ferrix has a layer. He has actually two different layers. He has that top, that's sort of the off the shoulder top, which one he could roll up the sleeves, but the main thing is he has the tank top underneath. Taking that off, crazy. He also has the harness belts with all of his packs around his thighs that he could remove. That would be another layer that he could deal with and mess around with. Aster has the vest and the apron and then the shirt that he could remove or mix and match or whatever like that. So that's very important. And then again with Sinnott, he has the top sort of bib collar thing. Then he has a lot of layers. He has a belt, he has the vest, and then he finally has his regular shirt, which is rolled up sleeves, so unrolling them or anything like that would be different as well. Obviously, Hotsun has the very most layers with his jacket and then his shirt, this big jacket, the shirt, he's got the gloves, he's got the, all the ruffles and everything, so removal of the ruffles is a manipulation, taking off of the gloves, removing the coat, all of these sort of things. Oh, yeah, pastry puff. Yeah, vibe, exactly. It's such a good sort of way to have that character have their signature outfit, have the character, still be there, but just having those moments where they interact with the outfit that they wear and just quote-unquote edit it slightly in order to show one way or the other. Another thing I like to do is the amount of buttons on your shirt unbuttoned, right? I can put every single one of the collars and Hotsun in a button-up shirt and all make them look different. Like, that's the shit, right? Like, that's it's just how much sleeve is rolled up, how it's rolled up, how much is buttoned, unbuttoned, tucked, untucked, etc.
Is it a scrunched up sleeve, or is it, nicely folded into a cuff?
Exactly.
Is it a tight button, or is it a loose one that causes the shirt to hang a little bit more off the shoulder?
How many buttons are unbuttoned? It's just so lovely. So
see,
beautiful.
that's Ori's favorite. She wants to show off chest.
Favorite thing. No, but it's also very much
there's a reason she stands Wolfwood.
But it's also very much, yes, please, thank you. But it's also very much the idea of, with a button-up shirt, you can show how open somebody is. Hotsun would, of course, have his buttons, every single one buttoned, right? Yep. He would also have the sleeves buttoned, right? So all the way down to the wrist, cuffed and buttoned, everything like that. So he's tucked in, that'll thing, the full put-together look, okay? Now, Sinnott is the next one there. He would probably still have it buttoned all the way to the top, all the way up the neck, but he would have the sleeves rolled up, right? Now, why would he do this? Is because he doesn't want to get his, you don't want to get things down your shirt when you're dealing with, medical things, but you don't want to have your sleeves dragging through the blood, so you would roll them up, right?
And
Like
he's
that.
also, as a medic, he's also supplying herbs for healing. So he's also a gardener. Rolled
Mhm.
up sleeves are very much a staple
But
of a
again,
gardener.
when you're gardening, you definitely have your shirts buttoned up because you don't want bugs and stuff getting down there. It's
Oh,
very
you would
many
know about
layers.
that.
Oh god, please. Aster would probably be the next one. He would probably also have his sleeves rolled up, again, regularly rolled up, but he would probably not have that top button buttoned. You know, he would just probably be chill, right? Most people who are casual, they don't have that top button buttoned or anything like that. Ferrix has it all the way open. He's wearing that undershirt, tank top, but it is like
Ferrix
either as a
is
jacket
definitely the most loose of all of them.
or
He's
down on
got-
the sides.
He's got the most. So everyone
Nothing
has
but
something
buttons.
kind of
You
tight
push her
around
buttons,
them.
PCM.
Oh, leave Neffy alone, please.
Uh,
But when I think of our characters, there's always something kind of form-fitting around them. Like, even with Milano, like, he's got the jacket that's not tight.
oh,
But
but
it's
it is
definitely
snatched.
snatched
He's got
and,
the
like,
waist.
Formed
His
to his
shirt
body.
is tucked in. You know,
Yeah.
he's got
So there's definitely a little, I'm gonna say,
the
tightness
fit and
there.
flair.
Aster has the apron and the vest wrapped
Mhm.
around him, so that's kind of tight as
It all
well.
draws to the waist. You can say
It all
everything
draws
draws
to
to the
waist.
waist.
And then you think of Ferrix, I think the belts help with that. But if you think about it, he has the loosest clothing out of all of them. He's
Just in
wearing
the
a
shirt.
tank top just on display, and with his shirt, it's oversized on him. It's falling off the shoulder. It is constantly loose. It is constantly hanging. Like, there is nothing uptight about this character. At least outwardly.
Mars dropping them hints.
Well, I think it's important because you can learn a lot about a character just from looking at them. You want me to take my favorite example? I'll take my favorite example.
Yeah, you can have your favorite example. I told my favorite example. Jeez.
Well, this is why it's so fun being part of a fandom, because you get to exchange theories with people. And, Vash the Stampede, people have said Vash's basically massive
Let the boys have
jacket.
his legs.
Yeah, let the boy have his legs, please.
Please let the
But the
boy have his legs.
fanfics are good with like all the prosthetics. Very nice. But he wears a very oversized jacket. Now there's a sentimental reason to why he has that jacket, but the fandom has also talked about like there's this whole scene later on where his brother berates him like, oh, you try to appear less threatening, you try to make yourself look vulnerable. And it's like, yeah, he does look very tiny because of
He
the
looks so
size of that
small.
jacket. He looks so small, he looks so skinny that he doesn't look threatening. And you kind of realize like that is purposeful, not just from a design point, thanks to the brilliant artists behind the series, but from a character standpoint. He would choose to portray himself that way. So
It's very
yeah,
good.
you can definitely learn a lot about a character just from looking at them. I'm sure if you looked at some of your favorite characters, Ori, like I'm trying to think Natsu, for example. Like very, very expressive character. I would say that's reflected in like the open vest that he has.
Well, he's got the Aladdin
the way
shirtless
his
vest
hair
in
is.
the first iteration, and then later on he gets a clothes vest, but it's hella snatched. But it is that he's kind of grown up a little bit, so.
And that's how they reflect that with the closed vest. It's meant to show that maturity. Oh, yeah.
But yes.
Third time I'll say it. You can learn a lot about a character just from looking at them.
Oh yeah, definitely. But yeah, I think if characters, and the whole point of the show is character growth, right? Like I think there's shows that obviously it doesn't
matter.
A good example is while Gravity Falls obviously has character growth, development, and changes, that is not the sole focus of the show. Does that make sense? There is this mystery. That is the point, right? You have the mystery, and then it's how the characters interact with this mystery that makes the show a whole thing.
I would also say Adventure Time is a good example because Finn never changes that outfit. But by God, if he doesn't go through so many changes during that story.
So okay, I'll talk about Finn. I don't know what you did, PC. No, you torture Neffy. You made Neffy to be tortured.
I said stop hurting Neffy. Leave her alone.
Stop hurting Neffy. But no, what I was gonna say about Finn. Finn is a very interesting thing. He has two changes. Neither of them are outfits, but they are actually consistent, which is very fun.
It's the mostly PCM. It's the mostly that gets me.
The mostly makes it tough. Finn loses his arm at some point, which is incredibly foreshadowed like 80 different times. But that is probably the biggest thing. What's very interesting are what replaces his arm, because that changes multiple times. But the other thing that people don't think about as much because you don't see it every single time is Finn's hair. We are revealed relatively early in the show. I think it's season 1, if not season 2, that Finn has luscious locks of untamed, blonde hair that he promptly cuts off because he is selfless, right? It's to save this, it's to appease this wicked witch. It doesn't go right, but it's supposed to show his naivete and his heart to show it. They never, and I give full credit to this, the show writers never ever let that slide as something he did. It's never retconned or what's the word? Like overlooked. If he takes his hat off, the stage of hair growth is consistent. Okay? It gets longer. There's an episode much later in the series where Finn recuts off his hair. Why does he do this? He wants to, he's sick of being the hero, this very, prominent figure. He wants to be able to go outside his house and just do whatever the fuck he wants. He doesn't want to be berated by paparazzi. Hello, Enthuse. Happy night.
Hi, Enthuse.
And so he shaves off all his hair to have this sort of like side, the balding man look, essentially. And then he gives a little, thank you for the raid, Hans. Hello, everybody.
Oh,
welcome.
Hans?
We're having a fun little time here, chilling. Talking about Adventure Time. We're just kind of vibing at this point. This is vibe time. And he puts, hello
Albarin,
Boswell, Artemis Rose.
Artemis
Noop to all,
I
yes.
love that
Jip
name.
Raccoon, hello.
Jip Raccoon.
And, and he puts on this mustache in order to pretend to be this guy he calls Davy. Fiendtails, hello.
Fiendtails, hi.
And, there's a whole thing about Bemo's very sad that he's shaving his gorgeous hair, but the whole point is that he does not want to be Finn. And again, once they fix that and he shaves it all off again and we deal with Davy, because honestly it's a very mental illness thing, right? Finn really needs a lot of help. Again, they don't ever stop showing that growth. So it shows the passage of time, right? So that's sort of like a very interesting thing where, he doesn't really change blue shirt, blue shorts, white hat, but in those very fleeting moments that he does, it is significant. And that's what I think is very important about the whole thing. If you are going to change a character's appearance in any way, it has to be purposeful. Now, it doesn't have to be necessarily like a great big crazy thing, right? Like your characters can go to a party and want to change their outfit to fit the party, right? Like it doesn't have to, but there has to be a reason in general, right? And it has to be thought out. because just shoving any character in any outfit, it just doesn't work. I do a lot of studies, and 90% for fun, but of what the characters will look like in, say, the band AU, right? Because it is important as to how they vibe across the whole thing, the whole time. Because
Well, you want to keep some resemblance to their canon counterpart.
Oh,
so
that's what I was
this
gonna
is
say.
actually something we talked about. I forget if it was last week or a couple weeks ago. But that you want to keep, color consistency because they have their signature
Shape
recognizable
language.
color, shape language.
All that sort of stuff.
See if there are accessories that don't work for the time period of the AU you're doing, then you kind of update them. Like Milano now gets spiked bracelets. Ferrix gets a whole bunch of belts hanging around him instead of his tool belts, because that's not his role in this particular AU. But it still holds true to who Ferrix is, because that shape language that you're used to seeing in his legs is still there.
Yes, Pastry Puff. Pastry Puff, this is very funny that you talk about like wearing cold outfits, right? One, I can't wait to see that. The second we're freaking done with Justice for All, I'm watching the fucking anime because I need to. But Dylan's gonna watch it with me. We're very excited. But
oh, nice.
What I wanted to say is that so they do that in the movie Sinbad and the Seven Seas. It's very interesting that you talk about that because it has been considered in our in Outcast's world as well. Sort of the climate is a very important thing. Similarly with a very early quote-unquote pirate character that I made in 2018, maybe earlier than that. He has no shoes, he has shorts, he has rolled up sleeves, very light clothes and stuff. How would he deal with the seasons? It was put into that essentially his whole caravan. Well, yes, I do know Pastry Puff, but that was, I was told, was the next season. So I'm okay. I won't spoil myself accidentally by just watching through the first season episodes. That's what I was told, at least. Correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah. So it was in the lore.
Dr. Stone had a fantastic seasonal character design. Absolutely loved it.
And I think that harkens back to they have to have a reason to have a different outfit, right? And because one of the hardest things, and I think
weather change is definitely a good
weather change is a great reason. Locale in general, like culture change and everything like that. And now if you're in a world like I was gonna point back to Spy X Family, right? They're supposed to be normal people, so they change your outfit every day. However, it's certain to be sure that they have an aesthetic, and this is something that I've worked for my own wardrobe in the past couple years, is to have an aesthetic where everything goes together. Because in the past it was just like, ooh, that's pretty on the shelf, I'll get that, and ooh, that's pretty, and I'll get that, and ooh, like that, but they never really necessarily went together, and you always had the problem of like, I have this shirt but nothing to go with it, or I have these pants but no shirts to go with it, and it's just all of a mess. So in the past couple years, I have made an effort to only get certain things with certain colors and like certain styles of shirt and all this sort of stuff. So at this point in time, I think I could accurately fit into a show or a comic as myself, and while my outfits changed, still be easily recognized as the character that I am. Another good example is like I said, so Spy X Family. Lloyd and Yor, even when they're in matching outfits, and even Anya, even when they're in matching outfits, they're still their own people with their own specific vibe. You still feel like that character isn't there. But if you were to put them in something very unlike them, it would either have to be for a purpose. Example, Lloyd, he's a spy, he's supposed to fit everything. They're currently about to start Big Top. What are we talking about? Got lost.
I don't know. If you're talking about us, we finished Big Top.
Yeah, we finished Big Top.
We long finished that.
We're in
We're in Farewell My Turnabout.
Yeah. Oh, trying to remember all the Turnabout names is wild. Yeah, I only have. They're currently about to start Big Top Lakitu. I'm sorry. I'm looking at
I
both YouTube
don't
and my
see a
thing. It
previous
didn't come
message.
up. Sorry,
It didn't
Lakitu.
get blocked, did it? Because
I don't think so.
I
I
thought
don't
that
see
happened
anything.
earlier.
I don't see anything. You saw that happen earlier? No.
Yeah, I think it was Pasty Puff type shit, and YouTube flagged it for me to look over.
Yeah, I don't see anything. You're
I
talking
thought it
about
was
Backwards
fine, so I
Rocket
allowed
Studios
it.
dub of Ace Attorney. I see. They are currently about to start Turnabout Big Top. I see.
Okay.
But yeah, so I think no matter what, there's a lot of effort that has to be put in to character outfit changes. But when that effort is put in, I love it. I'll eat that stuff up.
It's definitely not something that can be done willy-nilly.
Can't be done lightly. Definitely not.
It's definitely cool to see your characters in different outfits. And of course, there's also the general vibe of like, just stuff them in this AU and give them the outfits that the other characters were wearing. Like, that's totally something you could do. But if it's like within the same universe and you want to do an outfit change, there's definitely some guidelines that should be followed.
The hair thing in Deuce? The hair of like cutting the hair or like putting it up in different styles? Oh, the hair growing. Yeah. I think the growing is the really subtle but like good part, right?
I think my favorite instance of hair growth with a character has to be Thorfinn from Vinland Saga. For those of you who don't know the series, I'll just describe like the hair symbolism going on. But basically, when he starts out as a little boy, like he has dreams of being a warrior. He wants to be a proud Viking, and he's very innocent about it. Like clearly, this is a guy who's got some pipe dreams right now. So his haircut is very boyish, and it emphasizes his boyish face and his naivete. After some hardship and trauma, he starts going through a bit of a transition where he starts learning to be a killer, and his hair is starting to get a bit more wild, a bit more untamed. And then when we get to the series proper, I think about around episode 8, if I remember correctly, he's got a full head of fluffy hair, and it is completely mangled. It's in like every direction. It is unkept. Like, this is a wild man who can kill without blinking. So that's like season 1, which is actually technically the prologue. But then you get to season 2. Without giving too many spoilers, by the end of season 1, Thorfinn has basically lost everything. And by season 2, his hair is now grown all the way down to his shoulders. Like, it is long. He's even got a beard and a mustache coming in. So he's starting to look a bit more like his father, but you also kind of see like now he's let himself go in a completely different way. Like, it's not like untamed, distracted by this goal like he was in season 1. Now in season 2, he is lost. He has no idea what to do. And the length of his hair reflects that. Because now it's stringy. Now it's hanging. It's just laying there. Which very much reflects how he acts. Definitely one of my favorite instances of hair to represent character development and mindset.
I think what's so interesting that you mention that, Mars, is the idea that when I think about our characters in Outcast, is that they are in a very specific and, for the callers at least, settled life for now. You know, before Hudson shows up, they are pretty content.
Is basically the catalyst.
It's pretty
that's
calm.
going to upend everything.
And so what's interesting is that when I think about it, you know, and Mars, you know, hopefully you do too, is when I think about especially Milano and Ferrix and Aster and Sinnit, they've gone through their first big life decision change, and that was becoming a pirate, right? So when you look at specifically like Milano with the hair growth, this sort of thing, it's all in the backstory at this very moment, right? That is their, honestly, while they still have stuff to work through, I don't think anything is going to be necessarily as drastic as the thing that they first went through to become pirates, right? They sort of have to sort that out a little more.
Not
right?
that drastic.
Like, they have to sort out those feelings, but that first sort of thing.
I think this is the beauty of our comic and our storytelling, is that, and again, harkens back to real life, because sometimes you have that moment where you're like, yes, I figured everything out. I know what direction I'm going in now. I know what I want out of life. And then something happens to you, and all of a sudden that all comes crashing down. Everything you thought you figured out, that you thought was resolved, that you thought you'd never have to confront again, is now staring you directly in the face, and you have a choice to make. Like you said, Ori, though, I don't think it's going to be as drastic as the first change.
They have taken the first big step.
What we were going for was, they made this first original choice, but everyone's kind of like, okay,
that was it. We did
it. I figured this out. I got it.
That was the
problem solved. Done. I have no more development to do. No, they definitely have more, and Hotsun is the catalyst that kind of upends this peaceful lifestyle. But in all honesty, without Hotsun, these changes would not come. So.
Yeah. And so what's so interesting about that is the fact that most of my fun in the character designing for the actual comic comes when relation to the backstory, right? And I'm thinking about it right now because literally today I took an hour in my sketchbook and was like, these are mulattoes from ages like 18 to now, and sort of like had fun doodling. I've drawn Hotsun as well as like a child and, like a teenager and young adult and this sort of thing. So it is a lot of my fun. Sinnit's younger, backstory design, all of it sort of, that's where the fun comes in, because I think that's where it's important, because like I said, they are at the point where they already made one small step for man, one giant leap sort of thing originally. And now it's sort of the repercussions and the sort of like, oh yeah, I shoved this into the back of my mind and repressed it because it didn't really matter anymore, and now here's this guy making it come out. So I think that's the whole thing with our specific comic, that it would never be as much of a big change for most of the characters, and that's what's interesting about it all.
Absolutely.
Alrighty.
What makes it fun.
Does anybody have one final question about anything? We'll probably take, and then we'll probably sign off. It can be about anything, about the comic, about life, about our favorite chocolate temperature. Who knows?
I personally like room temperature chocolate.
I think it depends on the chocolate. If it's Hershey's chocolate bars, refrigerator, top tier.
Oh, Cats, yes, pastry puff.
I do love cats. I'm more of a dog person, but like, I've had cats. I still like cats. They're still very cute and good. Unfortunately, both me and Dylan are more allergic to cats than dogs.
Oh no!
My father's more allergic to cats than dogs. It's just the lot we have in life. And so, yeah, great, awesome, fantastic day.
I have had kitties ever since I was 4 years old, basically. I have had 3 kitties over my lifespan. They have all been such cuddlebugs, such sweethearts. Like, oh my god, I really lucked out.
I've had
with kittens.
2 cats.
I've never had an aloof cat, which is wild.
I've had 2 cats. They were both when I was younger. I only really distinctly remember one, and well, he was very funny. He definitely liked cuddles. He definitely was classic hound for the freaking neck scratches. Oh my god, you put your hand out, chin on the hand.
Neck.
It's the chin scratches. Oh my
Constantly. Oh, and
Loved
then the
it.
closed eyes followed by the purr.
Oh, he would drool too. He was
like
a
they're
drooler.
in heaven.
He was a very fluffy cat, and he would drool, so it would all get caught in his little neck. And so you're just scratching him, and it's just like, oh, it's wet, Domino.
It's like,
thanks.
the faucet's going.
The faucet's going. Ice cream or s'mores mood. I'm just talking chocolate bar, right? If you have a Hershey's chocolate bar, what do you do with it, right? The plan is to eat it just the chocolate bar, right? You're not putting it in anything. You're not adding anything to it. Just eating the chocolate bar. To me,
just straight up.
that Hershey chocolate bar goes in the fridge. Comes out of the fridge, get that snap, delicious. However, Cadbury, room temperature.
No, you're going to break your teeth if you put Cadbury in the freezer.
Oh, I have, but it's better room temperature because you know why? The
cream is all gooey.
It's not even that. I think it's just the higher quality chocolate doesn't depend on the temperature difference. The lower quality chocolate benefits from the chilling of it.
I see.
But all right, guys, with that, I think we'll sign off. You can see Artemis so very kindly used our little thing and put the comic in chat. More of a room temperature guy. I like it too.
Thank you much.
But yeah, go check it out. We had a new episode just upload on Monday. The next one will come out the 5th of June. So keeps eyes out for that. You know, we talk about it all the time. I mean, that's what this is. So
exactly.
We'll hopefully see you guys on Sunday for our drawing. I think it's Monsters from Memoryception. Yeah, Monsters from Memoryception. Yeah. Which is essentially, I drew monsters from memory. Now can I draw those monsters I drew from memory? And that is what we will test. And
this is going to be interesting.
It will definitely be a time. It will definitely be wild. And we'll see how well I do.
And you'll get to hear about our campaign.
Yes, you get to hear about our campaign as well. So, love that. Hope to see you guys then. If not, hope you all have a happy weekend. If you're in America and you get the 3-day weekend, even better. And we'll see you guys then. Good night.
Take care, everyone. Thanks.